thinking that I could serve God and still make decisions without consulting Him is a sense of being dead. I'm not aware that my life doesn't belong to me.
I think sometimes too that it's the big things that cause death, but a lot of times it's the little things, and sometimes it's even the little things that appear good.
Does the world need more Christian influencers? So, tell us a bit about yourself. Brenda Palmer.
Brenda Palmer. I am born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. I said west side of Chicago. I'm from Chicago, they don't understand.
Really? Okay.
I met someone today, LeVar.
Yeah.
His wife is from Chicago. He's like, my wife's from Chicago. She's from the south side.
Oh.
She said it's a Chicago thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I currently live in LA. And I am an author, podcaster, and preacher.
Ooh.
And so for the last year, I have full-time jumped into preaching the gospel around the world. And that's been really scary, but rewarding.
Yeah.
To just kind of see how God has, like when He says do a thing, and then He meets you on the other side of it. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's do that.
Yeah.
So I have a podcast, called Life in Perspective that I started in my closet during the pandemic. And now we like full on film it. And I just did Lecrae. That's really the crazy thing about it is that I didn't reach out to him to be a guest. He reached out to me. And I was like, look at God. Like, it started in my closet. Like, not knowing anything about it. And I'm like, wow, that's only something that like God could do. So I love Little Weeks from God.
The power of your yes.
Power of God. Man, come on. And I've been doing that. And I host these pop-up gatherings called Come Alive Collective around the country. And so we're going to go on tour in the month of August and just pop up in Atlanta, New York, the DMV, Dallas, and Houston. And just for people to have encounters with Jesus. So I've been doing, I did it, like played around with it a little bit last year. And now I'm like, okay, God.
Yeah.
Let's try it.
Yeah.
Putting it on you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I've just been kind of taking the journey with Jesus.
Yeah.
Seeing where I end up.
And you're saying earlier you're writing a book, correct?
I am.
Exactly.
It's hard. It's really hard. I think because I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I think I like am in my head a lot.
Yeah.
And so I feel like God's like, just like, let's do it together. Yeah. And so I feel like I'm learning another way to be like dependent on God. And so yeah, it's cool. It'll come out summer of 2025.
Okay.
So it's my first book ever, and I'm nervous about it, but excited that I get to do it.
Yeah. So you're originally from Chicago.
Yes.
What brought you to LA? Or the West Coast, I'd say.
Yes, the Lord.
Ooh, yeah.
I always wanted to move to LA, so I finished grad school in 2014, and I thought I was gonna come straight here. Like I had an interview at Radical Media. They used to like do the tour documentaries for like all the major artists, and then stuff started falling apart, and I was like, I'm not built to live in my car. So no. And so I stayed in Chicago, and I was like working at H&M, and then I started volunteering at my church, like helping them with social media, because it was only like Facebook then. Instagram was very, very new. And so I started doing that as a volunteer. And then someone on staff was like, she should join our staff. And then I went from like being a volunteer to like part-time, and then grew. And then I was like leading ministries, building creative team. I was traveling with my pastors, and I did that. I was running the young adult ministry. And I think that's when I started to feel like a call of God on my life, and I wasn't fully running. I was still kind of like, I don't want to be anybody's pastor, but then I was like, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do, and I had kind of settled in that. And then I feel like God was like, all right, now you can go to LA. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And so my life has kind of been like that, kind of like say yes to God, and then I settle in a place, and He's like, all right, now that we got this lesson, let's go to the next place.
And then you mentioned that you wanted to get into producing, things like that.
And that was originally do that. Like I worked for like BET, for Tidal. I was a producer producer on a women's talk show called Better Together at TBN. I did that for almost 2 years. And then I started working in production at church. So the church I attend now, One LA, I was running production during the pandemic. And then I left there after 6 months, and then God led me to Centerpoint. And I was supposed to be on staff there as the director of communications and experiences. So I oversaw worship, production, and comms. And then that's where I started preaching. And so September 1st, 2021, I preached my first sermon. And God was like, this. And I'm like, no. And that's kind of just been where it's been the whole time. Just kind of just saying yes and ending up.
Yeah.
What was a moment that you were like, okay, God, I'm going to give up like the producing end, or what I thought was my dream, and I'm going to follow this what you have for me, or what you're asking me to do?
I feel like I go through ebbs and flows of that. But I think moving to LA, which is odd, but moving when I did, I knew that it would be about ministry. I just didn't know what it would look like. So like even when I was a producer at TBN, I was hosting Bible studies in my living room. So it was like, I feel like there was always this like pull towards that. I think I always thought I had to let go of one in order to serve the other one.
Yeah.
Where I felt like I was like, no, I need you to know like who you are. And then you can, wherever you go, you'll show up the same way. And so there's this quote where it says like, I need to remove you from what you do so I can show you who you are. And so then when I feel like God, it's like, no, at my core, it's like to lead people to Jesus.
Yeah.
So if I'm podcasting, if I'm producing, if I'm preaching, I'm going to do that either way. But when I moved to Centerpoint, it took me away from LA. So it meant, there's none of that here.
Yeah.
And so I moved in June of 2021, and God said, leave LA in LA. And I did. Then I didn't take any freelance things for like 6 months until God gave me a release. So from June to December, I only served the church. Like I didn't do anything extra. And if anybody knows me, that is unheard of. Like to just do one thing. And then the top of 2022, a door opened and God said, now you can go because this doesn't define you. So like, it was like, I knew that my calling could exist in both spaces.
Gotcha.
And so now I still get to do it, but I don't even really desire to. I feel like I am the most fulfilled when I'm preaching the gospel.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you've kind of had something like that too, right? When like, hey, God, you just wanted to volunteer,
Yeah.
and you didn't.
Yeah, I was in a totally different industry and different area of life, and everything just like, I mean, for lack of a better word, like fell apart. It was like God went in and just uprooted everything. And then I like didn't have a job. I was injured. I was like, at that time, like I wasn't in a relationship. I was living at home. Like I was like, what do I do? The Lord was like, volunteer at church. I was like, oh. Like, I want to stay home and nurse my injury and watch like Price is Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, daytime TV.
Yes.
And the Lord was like, just do it. And then it was in that journey of saying yes that the Lord was like, okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I started pastoring the angels, so I got, went in to get my pastoral licensing and things like that. The Lord was like, this is just like you were talking about, like, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
The Lord was like, see, like, this is why I stopped everything. And so it's interesting. Some people's journeys are progressive, like they move from this to, and sometimes God just gets in there and he's like course correction of like, nope, I want you over here. And it's ugly and it's messy but it's beautiful at the same time. I remember someone saying, like, birth is not a glorious, like, beautiful experience. It is beautiful because the child that comes out of it,
but it's
messy.
Yeah.
And it's painful sometimes when God's birthing something in you. But, when you get to the other side and you look back and you're like, wow, look at God.
Yeah. And this was his plan all along.
Yeah. And we met, well, she seriously like to think that, she also gained that.
Come on.
So,
Come on. She leveled up.
She leveled up. She leveled up. Thank you for the word, King.
Come on.
That's funny. So we were diving into this summer into the book of Ephesians, and you just spoke at our church two amazing services, two amazing word that I do believe that really they really did something to our house in a good way. Ephesians 2:1, it says, all right, and you were dead in your offenses and sins, in which you previously walked, according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. That's kind of like a wild kind of statement itself. So this concept of being dead in our trespasses and sins, like what are those things? And how are these things called spiritual death?
When I hear like dead in my trespasses and sins, I think for me was when I thought my life was my own. Like when I thought my decisions could just be my decisions. Like, I was like the party. I like a good party. Okay, like I like to go out. I like to have fun. I like to turn up. I like to be in the mix. That's why I live in LA. I like to be outside. Yes, for sure. And I think like thinking that I could serve God and still make decisions without consulting Him is a sense of being dead. I'm not aware that my life doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
And so then I make the decisions that I end up in addiction, I end up in fornicating, I end up in connecting to people who don't mean me well. It causes that death to continue.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing around me that is like making me aware of God until I'm aware that I need Him.
There's this, the verse of wages of sin is death. Mm-hmm. And there is the thing where, of course, we accept, and like we're talking about, we were raised from death to life. But sin, as we, miss the mark, separates us from God, whatever. I do believe that sometimes sin causes something in our life to die when we choose to continue to that, right? Because you can be a follower of Jesus, but then still be like
dead.
Sinning, and dead. How does that affect your spiritual life as far as, now that you are a Christian, now that you've accepted Christ and you're trying to do good, but what are some ways that, how does it affect our spiritual end?
I think it creates distance. I think it's almost like how when Adam and Eve sinned, and the first thing they did was try to hide and cover themselves. And I feel like when we sin, like when we make those decisions that cause us to miss the mark, there is also this overwhelming feeling of unworthiness. So then it creates more distance because it's like, I messed up so bad, there's no way I'll take it. And so then it keeps creating this distance that we further. It's like I look at people who were strong in their faith and I go, how did they get all the way on that side? It's the little decisions that we make over time that then become this larger decision that says there's no way I can find my way back.
We think sometimes too that it's the big things that cause death, but a lot of times it's the little things, and sometimes it's even the little things that appear good going in. Like I know for me, you were talking about perfectionism. That was something that I really struggled with for a lot of years, and so much so that I ended up sitting down with like a therapist to walk through that because I realized that it was hindering my life. And she says, she's a believer. She says, when you walk in perfectionism, you live in death. Because in the like primal part of your mind, your body and your mind, that there is absolutely no way to be perfect. That only God is perfect. And so you're literally spending every day of your life in death. And here I was, saved, redeemed, alive, but living in a state of death from something that it's packaged as a good thing. Oh, I just want to be the best. Oh, I just want everything thus and so. And yet the enemy's so good about getting us to even buy into those things when we don't put the Lord in His rightful place and we don't understand who we are in relation to who He is, and we keep that straight.
That's really good.
It's definitely the little things, I think, too. Like, so I've been, about 3 weeks ago, I've kind of restarted my health journey in a good way. Like, I have some health issues that I just need to eat a certain way. And there's been so many times that it's like, it's not the big meals or whatever that will cause like change, but it really is those moments. So I'll give you an example.
Snacks.
Yeah, the snack. Or they bring in sausage McMuffins for like in the morning every Sunday, and it's like, man, I can pound 3 of those. One just ready to go. And there's not everybody eats them, so I know that after worship there's still some left over. And I'm hungry. But today, I caught myself, I was like, damn, I'm hungry. So I went, and yep, there's a bunch, and I was like, I took the patty off, because I'm not supposed to eat the bread that has inflammation. So I like took the patty, and I was like, all right, but I think that too, in my mind, now it's just a conscious choice of, okay, I'm deciding to do the right thing, or the thing that's going to bring me health. Yeah, I think even there's such a like talk and things with mental health right now, and even something so simple as making choices, or in the small choices that actually can bring health to our bodies, where like God just begins to work, and it's like. I've had a few friends that go, dude, like there's so many, like why is there the commandments and all this? But I'm like, look, if you look at that, is it really bad to like kill someone? Or is that good? Is that good? Yeah. Like should you be respectful to your parents? Should you like love, the neighbor? Should you be nice to people? Like it's small those choices, but they bring life. And then when we do that, we realize, there is a reason why God says these things. Yeah. There's a reason why, because it comes alive in our minds and someone going to live.
Yeah, and it is His love. Yeah. Like I think I'm always saying that, I'm like, it's not about rules, even restrictions. It's like God is saying, like, I created you to be this person. And this is the standard I'm setting so that you become that person. And so even like the convictions we feel when we do something, we like, I shouldn't have done that. It's just God's way of saying, like, I have so much better for you. And like, that's the way I want you to live. And if we don't ever, because I used to be that way. Like I grew up in PK. So I'm like, I don't want all these rules, right? It's like, be this way. Like, I don't want it. And then the more I started to understand, it's like, no, God is doing this because He's protecting me. Yeah. Because I can only see the moment I'm in. Yeah. And right now it feels like fun. But if I kill someone, all right, it's not going to be fun, Jeremy. Yeah. It won't be. Or if like the simple things, like I know, like I'm a millennial, so sex before marriage is a huge one that we don't want to accept. We're like, what if I die? Fucking married. It's like it doesn't matter. It's like it's God's way of protecting us, because to have sex, if we're not married, there's no covering in that. Yeah. And you become one with all the people. Yeah. Which is not going to remain that number one. Yeah. And then I take on all their things, and so then if I recognize that, like, it has to be bigger than God trying to like tell me what to do. This far distant God who lives in outer space where we think He lives. It's like, no, He's very present, and this standard that He set is to protect us. Yeah. Then it gets easier to go, maybe He knows better. Yeah.
Just to speak to all the millennials out there, I did not get married till I was 36.
Jesus.
So, it is possible to wait for that person and to do things God's way. And when you do, let me tell you, there's blessing in marriage that you can't imagine, because you don't have to bring any of the baggage with you.
No, for sure.
So anyway,
no, that's a good one. I'm 33.
Okay.
Right? And I'm like, all right, Lord. Yeah. Oh, Jesus. So I was like, I'm here serving you. Yeah. That's you get it. But I think it's too, what's LV is like the same God who moves in every other area of my life. Yeah. Will move that way too. And it's a sign of trust. Like if I could honor His commandment, it's like, I trust you enough that, like, even if you don't, I trust you like that I should do it either way.
Well, and He's got you on a journey. And so what's beautiful about that is that He hasn't brought that person to you yet, because you're doing what He wants you to do. Sure. For Him, for the work, for the kingdom. But when He brings that person, it means that the two of you together will do more for the Lord than you could do alone. And so He's going to bring the guy that, will allow you to partner.
Yeah.
I like that. We need a partner.
For sure.
But right now, you're crushing it for Jesus.
Amen.
So,
amen.
I mean, that turns into a relationship. When when God made Adam, he gave him a task to do before he made the partner. And in scripture, they refer to him as man and man, but it wasn't until after he was done with the task and he came back that God called him Adam. And then it's like, give you a partner, let me give you a partner.
It's good.
So he gave him these things to do.
And identity.
And then when he came back, it was like, yeah, you're Adam. I made you Adam, and now you're a partner. So it's those things that, like, we don't think about, and we get lost in the culture around us. Like you're saying earlier, doing it for culture and all around us, that we lose sight of like, what is God for me to do right now? And we're living out the purpose, and we're in the amazing world of just serving God with our entire lives, not just in our calling, but our vocation. It's like what you do, part of your work, and it's like, for others, it's like, man, just seek the Lord and see what He has for you to do, and and you'll find what He has for you and your identity in that. But yeah, keep our relationships, because like there's certain things that I feel are very. We want to get into things just because we're influenced by certain things, right? Like shameless. How do you say guilty? I guess this would be a guilty pleasure. I love Love Is Blind. Have you seen that show?
Yes. But nothing beats the first season.
Yeah. The first season was so good.
It was clutch.
Yeah.
It's like just want to be on TV.
Yeah, exactly. I see you.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah. But you have those things that kind of influence you, right? It's like, well, maybe I would want to be on that show so I could finally find love. And Paul says in verse 2, the course of this world and the prince of the power in the air. So the course, the influences. So how do those play into the influences? Something like that, where a TV show or social media or the pressure, or we're consumed by, we're in such a consumer culture. How does that play into shaping our values and our actions today?
That just social media alone, I fell into the Hailey Bieber Air One smoothie train. It had been out for so long, and then somebody posted a video, and people kept sharing it, and I was like, I gotta go try it. I gotta try it. It was actually good. I don't know if it's worth $30. It's very good. And so I was thinking about that, because I'm like, I had no desire for this thing, but it was fed to me over and over again, and then it created a hunger for it. And so I think like that is what happens in the culture we live in. What we feed ourselves, we become, like, essentially, or we beholding. It becomes important to us, where this wasn't even maybe your ideology, but you kept watching a video that kept feeding it. TikTok is really good for that. You watch something and that has become your algorithm. Even if someone sends it, I'm like, I don't want this. I don't know how I got on the dark side of TikTok. But I think like it proves that it's almost like you are what you eat. Like that starts to drive my desires. It's like, I wasn't really thinking about how much I wanted to be in a relationship until I see all the relationship goals on Instagram. And so I think that plays a huge thing, because it's almost like the world is telling us what's important. So the world tells us that status is important, or how many followers you have, or how many people know your name, or you have to look this way, you have to look that way. And so I love that you just said the thing about Adam, because it's like God gives him work, then He gives him his identity. And if we don't know who we are in Christ, we'll let the world tell us who we're supposed to be. And that is dangerous, because we literally saying yes to Jesus is the epitome of counterculture. We will always be the opposite of culture. So when I think about Romans 12, how it says like, don't get so accustomed to the culture, don't fit so loosely into it, is because it'll always be drawing us towards it. And it's gonna seem like fun. But that's why in the scripture in Ephesians, where it says you're following the culture, but you're serving the prince of darkness, because we aren't aware that it's the enemy driving it. It just looks like fun. It looks like this is the best song on the radio right now. I definitely need to listen to this. Or this is a show that everybody's watching, and we're not knowing that it's really Satan behind it drawing us away from God. So that's why we have to be aware that, like, does this align with what God has called us to do? Or is it drawing me away from it?
I love how you use the word behold. And as you were talking, I was thinking about this, like even in Revelation, the four living creatures covered with eyes, like they are beholding him. We were made to behold him. Like that will be our function in heaven, is to behold and to worship. And so you worship what you behold. And so when you begin to have these influences in front of you constantly, you know, then we begin to go, oh, I want to be like that person.
We begin to worship.
I want to do, and our worship gets twisted. It's amazing how the enemy doesn't just use it to influence us, but to really twist our worship.
Yeah. It's literally why he got kicked out of heaven.
Yeah.
Because he was receiving and he was like, this shouldn't even be going to him. This is for me. And he's literally just put himself in all the things of the world, and he's still looking for that same worship that belongs to God.
Yeah.
You know?
So what's your take on, does the world need more, I guess, Christian influencers?
Well, I have been known to be considered Christian influencer, and I hate it. No,
We're here to be Christian influencer, Brenda Paul.
it's really crazy. Like, my following grew from posting sermon clips.
Oh.
And so, like, majority of the content that people were like, oh, you make faith-based content. I'm like, no, I make content. Faith is just a part of my life. So you get that. I do think it is a space that believers need to infiltrate.
Yeah.
Because it is where our kids are. Like, the youth are not sitting in the pew, but they are scrolling on TikTok.
Yeah.
And TikTok has a whole Christian side to it.
Yeah.
Like, I'll have a video and somebody will comment, keep me on this side of TikTok.
Yeah.
Just so the algorithm can keep feeding them stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think absolutely we need to be there, but we need to have an understanding on why we were there.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though people will consider me an influencer, that's not why I'm there. I'm there to share the gospel.
Yeah.
And so I think if we are not rooted in our why, we will get lost because the moment the following starts growing, now it's easily to become about you.
Yeah.
And then you forget, like, oh, I just came here to infiltrate the space for Christ.
Yeah.
So I think we do need that. We need it. The Bible tells us to go into the world. That is where the world is.
Yeah.
So we have to meet them there. But we have to have the understanding on why we were sent there. We can't blend in. The hardest thing I think now is getting over apathy and not being silent, and we need to speak up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the issue is, like, with influence, now we're considering, do I want to risk this?
Yeah.
Do I want to get canceled? It's like, I don't care. Whatever the truth that needs to be shared, God's entrusted us to this space.
Yeah.
And so I 100% think that is where we need to be. If it's a sermon clip, if it's a good morning, God loves you, whatever it is to disrupt the noise, people need that more than we know. Because, social media is also causing the rise in depression, rise in anxiety, rise in suicide. Well, because it's all like people comparing themselves, they're not as good. They're like, the way we go through like spins in our emotions just from one scroll, it's like, oh, look at cute dog. And it's like 10 people killed. And it's like, I don't even have time to process all of those emotions. So imagine how much more people need to see Christ show up in that space. 100%.
Yeah.
But we need to know why we're there.
That's good. It's wild, like with, it even plays into like, if you're like a church staffer, or any church really, it's like, oh, I gotta keep up with this church, I gotta keep up with this church. And then it becomes about the content that you're putting out and not so much, or making it, but not so much about the heart behind it. What are we transmitting? What are you saying? Is this really drawing people to Jesus, or do we just want numbers because it's cool and it's gonna make this,
No, for sure, and it's not gonna work. Literally, over 1 million like kids in the next generation are leaving not church, their faith.
Wow.
That is an alarming number that only the church can respond to.
Wow.
And if we don't figure it out, how to be authentic and how to be holy,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, and really communicate the heart of what God intended for his church to be, we're going to have a generation that knew not the Lord.
Yeah.
That is gonna be our fate if we don't figure it out. Over 1 million kids leave, like, not church, their faith. They're saying, this Jesus thing isn't working for me. What is that? No. We gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
We gotta figure it out quickly. And so I think that we need to be in that space, and I agree with you. It has become like, sometimes I'm like, could you guys please stop promoting your stuff? We live in 5 states away.
Yeah.
You're not coming.
Yeah.
I'm not coming.
Yeah.
And we have to be more global minded. How can we take the heart of our church and articulate it to someone who lives in Africa?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because that is what it is. It's like, how can we be the body? But even though whatever we have going on here at the refinery, what are our cultural values? How do we duplicate that in that space where it touches somebody who lives in Istanbul?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what matters. I could care less about what the church is doing down the street.
Yeah.
What is our assignment? What did God tell us to do?
Mhm.
And we're doing it in the local context. Now, what does it look like to do it in a social landscape or globally, where we get to spread the gospel our way with our heartbeat, and the person who's across the seas, who's attracted to what we do in our culture, they can experience it, and they don't have to come to our 9 o'clock service. You know what I'm saying? So I think when that becomes a focus, then it's like, God's like, oh, I can use this. And you'll watch it. My content blew up because it was aligning with what the Lord wanted to do. I didn't have a strategy. I wasn't trying to, none of that. It was just like, oh, we're posting this today? Got it. Okay. And then just watching it do whatever God wants it to do.
Yeah.
What's the difference between building our kingdoms and being kingdom minded?
So good.
When we're kingdom minded, then we're like, okay, Lord, what do you want to do today? And that, bringing it back to what we were talking about, like the response you were talking about this morning, being obedience. It's like, okay, Lord, what do you want to do today?
Yeah.
And then, okay, I'll do it. It may not make sense. I love that, like, 90% of the people in the Bible who followed Jesus, it made absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
And they even look stupid, you know? Even look at Jesus. Jesus was willing to look stupid and to be questioned and to not be popular and to go against the grain because he knew what his assignment was and he was there to build the kingdom, and that's what he's asking us to do.
A sobering fact for me, or a sobering question for me, to in the approach of social media and even with church and social media and stuff, it's like the disciples have this tool. How would they use it? And somebody asked me that once, and I was like, sure, never. That's, yeah. And then I started really thinking about it. I was like, wow, if the Apostle Paul had this, and he's planting churches, and he's like, wait, you mean there's a free tool that we can reach not just people?
We don't have to move.
Yeah, and we don't have to move.
And risk dying.
Yeah, and there's phones.
Yeah.
Like, I could do this from and I don't have to go to jail. Like, he'd be like, contact So when you have, we talk about as you make content and it's kind of, you gain some influence there, what keeps you grounded?
Ooh, okay, there are a couple of things. First thing is taking breaks. Like, I have to take time away. I'm not always good at that because in my mind I'm like, you don't.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing though is always asking myself why I'm posting something.
Gotcha.
Like, that has to stay in the forefront. And along with why I'm posting it, then is it pushing people towards Jesus or pulling them away from him? All the way down to what I share on my stories. There have been many times where I'll share something because it was funny, and then I go, I have a responsibility now. Like, and some people will be like, it's not that deep. It is that deep, because now it is as holy as the platform we mount to preach the gospel, because that's now what I've done there. So now it's kind of like I have to do that the same way, and then having accountability, having people say, hey, Brittany, you probably shouldn't post that. You probably should take that down. You probably should take a break. I think that those are things that I have to keep in place, because if not, it's easy to lose sight. It's easy to fall prey to thinking that it's about us. And so it's always like, no, God, it's that. God, what do you want me to do today? It is that, and then it's search the thing in my heart that would be offensive to you. Search the thing in my heart that would make me choose this over you. And it's doing that consistently and keeping that at the forefront, because I never want a thing that God entrusted to me to take me away from it.
Yeah.
It's good.
Verse 4, Paul talks about, he says, but God, being rich in mercy because of his great love with which he loved us. God being rich in mercy. Now, I have heard that verse, man, so many times. I grew up a PK myself. But there was a point in my life where I abused that. And I took it to the fullest extent that I think I possibly could. Have you abused that? How does that like backfire when you abuse, the mercy? Or how does it bring us closer? Or how did we experience something that was like, man, like, God, I cannot believe that this, like, I'm still here or you're still here. Yeah.
It's the thing that drew me closer to him. I feel like I'm the kind of person who, like, I weigh the consequences. If I feel like it's worth it, I'm gonna do it. I don't really care if it's covered in grace or not. But I feel like I never felt like, because God's gonna forgive this, I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
I think I just subconsciously lived in the grace, like, never thinking that my consequences would ever lead me to death. And so I think I did, in a sense, abuse it because I never considered it at all. So technically, it's worse because at least most people are aware that, like, grace is covering this.
Yeah.
I didn't care. I made a very conscious decision. It's like, I don't want to do the God thing, and I'm going to do my own thing. And it was because when I came back to him, he was still there. Like, I really don't. I've accounted for all the dumb things you would ever do. The first time I felt like I was really calling me, I went on the bench. Like, I went out with my friends. I got high, and I was in the backseat looking for, like, snacks. I had the munchies really bad. And I remember trying to prove to God I wasn't the one he wanted. I'm like, I can tell, I promise you, because I really don't want to do this, and I'm going to let you know I'm not the one. And it was almost as if he was like, when you get done, I'll still be here.
What? So you grew up at PK, and you're trying to prove
I wanted nothing to do with ministry, like, at all.
what was disconnect there? What, if you want to share it.
I just didn't want it. Like, I think growing up, I've just been in church since I was maybe like 4. And I always say, like, I've always seen behind the curtain. And church could just be messy. It's like imperfect people who are aware that they need God.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, I didn't want to do that. My parents dedicated a lot of their lives to ministry. Not even like the platform stuff. Like, we always had people who lived with us. They were like, if they weren't like leading a church, they did like prison ministry, street ministry. Like, it just was the sum total of our lives.
Yeah.
And I just didn't, and I was always like free to do other things. Like, I played sports, I did those things, but I just didn't want, it was so much of my life growing up, I just didn't want that. I wanted something different. But it was like, this was always a part of God's plan. But yeah, there was just a part of me that was always running. I think since I was a kid, people would always call me, like, you're going to be a pastor. You grew up. And I'm like, I promise you I won't. I promise you I won't. And like, even as a kid, I had like a really, like, at 8 years old, I can remember having like a prophetic grace. But because it wasn't really cultivated, and it just was like, oh, I'm weird.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know. Nobody else is doing what I'm doing or sensing. And so it wasn't really cultivated. And then I think I needed the other journey. I think that the best testimony you could ever have is that I met Jesus as a kid and I still know him now.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't stray away. I think that's the best testimony. But I needed the other journey because I didn't know Jesus for real. I only knew the activity of church. I knew like what we did every week, but I didn't know him. And it wasn't until I experienced a really, really devastating church hurt where I feel like I met God face to face and I lost the foundational things I thought my faith was built in, and I saw God meet me in that place.
I was thinking, as you guys were talking, I am that kid that didn't run.
Yes.
I remember laying in my bed, 17 years old, and just telling the Lord, I just want you to take my life and do whatever you want with it. And that has been my heart from there. But I can tell you this, that for those out there that their journeys have been close, the enemy still loves, and unguarded strength is a double weakness.
For sure.
So the enemy loves to come in and say, oh, well then you're a little bit better. Or you got a little bit more together. Or maybe you don't have quite as much of a need. And what's been humbling for me is I work right now for a nonprofit that does sober living homes for women.
Okay.
Every week I'm sitting in with these women's stories. And I have been welcomed into the community where I participate like every other woman. And every week the Lord tells me, Brianna, you may not have dealt with addiction, but what in your life needs to go? What in your life doesn't belong there? What do you need to clean up? And so if we can, I love the story of the prodigal son, because everybody relates to the prodigal son, and he's gone and done all these things, but dude, that brother, he's that sense of like, well, I didn't go anywhere. Like, what about me over here? Right? Because his heart was looking for fault in other people. And so for those who have been extended a lot of grace is needed to be extended to others. But for those who have maybe walked in a state of grace for a long time, we cannot forget that we're still broken and messed up and dirty and needy and desperate for Jesus. Like there's no universe where we don't all, at the very core of who we are, need this, have the same need and look the same. We're all sinners. And we need him so desperately. So, I don't know. That's the place where God likes to keep my heart in a humble place of going, okay, well, your journey didn't look like that, but what if you let in this week that doesn't belong there? Let me clean that up. And even when, I think that keeps us humble too, when we meet with people in different journeys of their faith. Some of us, like, you've been in church since you were 4, same, growing up a PK, and so it's easy for us to judge other people and go, well, you should be at this stage. You should know this by now. Or I've been a Christian longer, so I know a little bit more than you.
Righteous.
But it's like, you know what? We are all in this glorious, messy process of sanctification. And dude, I just need Jesus.
But then, even when we were dead in our wrongdoings, he made us alive together with Christ. And by grace we have been saved. He made alive with Christ. Now we're dead. So raggedy. I believe that's being made alive with Christ is a truth that we need to hear more. We need to actually this is kind of like a hot thing to say, I think, but we talk about our pronouns or identify as this man. Identify being made alive with Christ. That is the purpose, or that is the identity where you begin to really live, where the self is gone and the new is here, and you walk different, you feel different. How does that impact the way you see yourself? Being made alive with Christ.
I feel like with God I can do anything. No, but there is like this understanding that God doesn't see me for the mistakes I made. It doesn't mean I should make more mistakes, but it means he sees me how he wants me to become. And so I feel like that is what it means to be alive in Christ. There is the reality of who I am, but when God looks at me, he sees me through Jesus, and he sees the version of me that he intended when he formed me in my mother's womb. When he said, let's make man in our image, that's the way he sees me when he looks at me through the finished work of Jesus. And for me, it makes me want to grow closer to him so I can adopt that version of who Brenda is. It's like, the way you can ask me to do certain things and the way that you're relating to me, God, there is obviously a version of me that I don't know. And so I know that the more I get to know God, then the more he'll reveal that version of me through the revelation of him. And so I feel loved by that. And I feel like when I really own that, it doesn't want to make me keep doing bad things because I can get away with it. It makes me go, I want to live up to the standard. I want to live up to that version of me that you see. So then it makes me pursue holiness. It makes me pursue being in the right standing that he already put me in. It's like, I belong here.
It's almost like when if you accept Christ in your heart, depending on who it is or who you talk to, like you kind of just kind of stop there, right? Like you can, well, that's kind of, you're good.
Yeah.
Like you accept Him as your Lord and Savior, yes, your life bears fruit and things like that. But I understand like this where, I love my wife, and because I love her, there's no way I want to live my life in a way to hurt her, right? I'm not going to try to stray. I'm not going to try to intentionally say mean things. I'm not going to be resentful or even do the things that she knows the things that I know she doesn't like. I'm not going to do that intentionally, and I've always approached that with God. Later in life, again, being a PK, you kind of have your own revelation because we're really good at blurring the lines. But that revelation was just really later in my life where it's like, I don't want to take this gift of grace and take advantage of it. I want to live in a manner that pleases God because I love Him.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hurt Him. I know that I'm not going to be perfect. I know that I'm going to make mistakes, but I intentionally don't want to do it. I don't want to put myself in places that will cause me to do that. Because then at that point it's like, okay, well, I'm doing it to myself here.
Yeah.
There's a different issue there. But for me, that is like, I want to forsake all these things because I love God. I believe Him, even if He didn't do any miracle in my life. He saved me already, and I have seen His work. I have seen how He's moved, and I want to give Him my life and live in that way.
I was thinking, it's like if He can raise us from the dead, then why do we worry that He can't do anything else?
Come on.
If like resurrection power to watch a dead body come alive again is, I haven't seen it in the physical realm. It's got to be the most powerful, mind-blowing thing. I was reading the story of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus recently, and Jesus like, Lazarus, come forth, and here comes this dead guy walking. So it's like, if I'm already a walking, living, breathing miracle and testimony to the power of Jesus, then I don't need to worry about anything else that I'm going to encounter. Do I think that the God that, raised me from the dead can't heal me? Or the God that raised me from the dead can't get me where I need to go and help me find, like, my journey and my path, or help me find my spouse, or help me heal from church hurt, or whatever it might be? It's like, man, if He can do that, He can do anything.
Anything.
We are His workmanship. I even think it's wild, like Jesus was a carpenter. So it was like He was making things, and I think there's this episode on The Chosen where he's like, where he's with the kids episode, and they ask him, it's like, oh, what do you do? And I think he responds with, he's like, well, I like to craft things with my hands and make them pretty, or something along those lines. I might be butchering. But I think it's amazing that He uniquely made us for a purpose and for a work. Like, we we're with love, we have something, create disciples of that, we have the Great Commission, but there's specifically work that He made for us to do, to point people to Him, to build the kingdom here, to bring people to Jesus. And ultimately that is that's the fulfillment of what you were on earth for. So the importance of knowing you're made uniquely for a purpose. What's the importance of that in your life, in culture, or just, actually let's talk about it like this, in culture first, right? Like, what's the importance of people knowing that? Because I feel like people hear it, but I feel like more people need to know that they're made uniquely for a purpose. How is the importance of knowing that crucial in culture today?
I think, man, what it just did for me, which I didn't really hear this earlier, but the fact that He made us uniquely, like, we're His workmanship, but for a purpose He previously intended. But then it starts with we were dead. their things don't have purpose. So he always intended to make sure we ended up alive. So for that, it's kind of like, I'm weird because I'm like, oh my goodness, he's so intentional. But like, I think a world that needs to know that finds that out when they become aware that there's a God who chose them before the beginning of time. And I think how it shows up in culture is the people who are already aware screaming that, but not like with their words, with our lives. Like if we live like we had a savior who gave us a gift like that, people would want to know, like, there's something different about Brianna. She responds differently to life. There's just like this, like this is like an LA thing. You have a light. It's like, let me tell you where that light came from.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like I think we miss that when we carry Jesus, he's attractive. Like Jesus was drawing crowds of thousands of people with no social media.
Yeah.
How was he doing that?
Yeah.
Because he was like living out like what God sent him to do. And so I think like we need to share the gospel, but people also need to see the power of it.
Yeah.
What has it done in your life? And I think we need to be billboards, like brand ambassadors for the kingdom. Like, this is where I was. Like, that's why I talk about the things I used to do, because that's not who I am anymore. But God, because of God and his like play in my life, now I can proclaim like, yeah, I used to get high. I used to do a lot of things. Then I met Jesus. And the high I was looking for only really came when I said yes to him.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to be okay with like talking about the messiness. For Bree to sit here and say, man, I was a perfectionist. Somebody's going to identify with that and go, man, if he did that for Bree, he could do that for me.
Yeah.
And that is how we show up in the culture, not being ashamed of where we came from, but owning and saying, this is where I was, but as a result of Jesus, this is where I am now.
Yeah.
So now you can know where you are isn't the end either.
Yeah. That's good. Well, as they say now, when you follow Jesus, as they say now, aura is plus 1,000. So have you seen that? Where it's, it's not if you follow Jesus, but there's a neat thing. It's like, dude, this person has 0 negative aura. Right? And then it's like, this person has like plus whatever aura.
Yeah. It means
Yeah.
always meaning.
I
Yeah.
think that really informs too how we interact with the world around us. Because if we aren't a physical hands and feet and representation of Jesus, then our first response will begin to look like him, where we're not judgmental, where we are forgiving and compassionate, where we will go the extra mile and persevere with someone through something. It will change as we're striving to look like him, and we look more like him, then that's like him showing up in the world, like times a million. All these hands and feet of Jesus reaching out, all of these eyes that are seeing things the way he does, all of these hands and feet serving and loving, even from an intercession standpoint of prayer. Jesus lived a life of prayer. He was communing with the Father and talking to him all the time. Man, if we did that, how things would shift and change, So it's like, dude, Jesus, I just want to look more like you, because then more of you will show up in the world.
Yeah. Now, personally, for you being God's workmanship, have you struggled with that? And how are you processing that, or how are you living that out now? What's the understanding now that you kind of are walking in it, or maybe it's a constant reminder? I know for me, it's a constant reminder that I'm his workmanship. I've just struggled with a lot of self-esteem things and things like that, and even comparison, man. Like it's compare yourself to everybody, but for me now, it's like we had this moment a few weeks ago where we were just amongst just kind of some in a group, like it was like a leadership thing, and we're talking about our spiritual gifts, and they asked us, hey, take this moment, here's an index card, and ask God, what if you want me to do with my gift? We just sat there for I don't know how many minutes and just put some soaking music on it. And and I was just like, in my head, I was like, I already know, stop comparing yourself. In my head, but I just jotted down, I was like, I gave you your gifts. You are wasting them by comparing yourself to everybody else. It's time for you to go run. I made you for this.
Wow.
And it wasn't like I'm better than people, but it was just, I don't know what clicked, or just in my heart it clicked finally, where it's like, that God, you've given me these gifts. They're not, I shouldn't, if I'm downplaying them, I'm downplaying you. I need to stop telling you that you made a mistake with me.
Yeah.
I need to stop telling you and showing you that like you wasted your time with me. And it's just clicked for me lately. It's like, no, run. And that's what's helped me lately, to just be more on my lane, if you call it that. Like, I'm just like, man, I'm just so focused on what God has for me, or what I'm doing for Him, what He wants me to do, and I'm just running to that. So personally, for you, what's that? His workmanship that He's prepared for you, and that made you uniquely for a purpose. How's the importance of that in your life?
This last month was really, really hard. I started speaking against things that I knew culture would have a problem with. So I used to be a part of a sorority, and I renounced it because I learned that it was some demonic things in it. And I didn't just bow out gracefully. I started talking about it very, very publicly, and it went. I know what cancel culture feels like. And that didn't bother me. It was the people that I held close to my heart that started to. It's okay to disagree, but it was just the way they were going about it, which I feel like the enemy used to get in my head. And so I started I feel like I'm still coming out of it, where I feel like God, I needed the reminder that I was His workmanship, that He created me uniquely, and it's okay. I don't have to do it like everybody else. It's the reason He called me, because He wants there to be a unique gift. And sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I had a couple weeks where I was like, I didn't even ask to do this. And the fact that I have to suffer for something I didn't even ask for is crazy. And I feel like God just started to speak to me and really, really double down on that, because it was one of those moments where I was like, I really do not want to I don't like how this feels. And so I feel like hearing God say, no, made you that way, and it's okay, that people aren't going to get it. And I just feel like He said to me, don't take it personal. And that shifted something for me. I'm like, you're right, God. But it's not even that person doing something to me. It's like the enemy wants to stop what God's trying to do. And so when I recognize God called me this way, and He created me this way, and that's enough.
Yeah, this is good.
I think it allows me to not compare my journey with anyone else's. Even telling you getting married later in life, there is still, right now we're trying to grow our family and have a child, and there's this idea of well, Lord, you must have made a mistake because I didn't have kids when I was 20 like everybody else, or this didn't happen for me at this time. And the enemy loves to get in there and have us compare our stories. But what's so beautiful, I love what you said when you talked about works of art. Because I love art. And so whenever we go somewhere, I love going to galleries. I used to go to a lot of galleries in college. I was that kid, hanging out. I have never once in my life had a conversation with someone where I was like, Van Gogh is better than Michelangelo. Or, this is better than that, or whatever it might be. I just sit there and behold it and enjoy it
For who it is.
for what it is, yes, and go, wow, isn't that beautiful? And then you go, wow, what intentionality the artist had. I wonder what they were thinking when they were doing this. I never sit there and leave a gallery going, well, this one over here is so much better than that one over there. Somebody should talk to that.
It's good.
Take that out of there. And I think that's how God sees us. If we're His workmanship, we're His pieces of art, He's not comparing us. We're uniquely and and just beautifully designed and made, and our journeys and the role that we have in the kingdom. It's unique and it's beautiful.
Fran, thank you so much for the conversation. Thank you for again depositing an amazing word into our house. Bless you in the ministry, guys, and to you. You always have home and family here. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Hey, thanks for watching or listening to Not Just Sunday. Like and subscribe. Share it with a friend so we can help as many people experience God